Hello. Welcome to Season 10 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is Because We Have the Microphone. And because we have the microphone, you will listen as we discuss a bunch of movies that we just kind of feel like watching with no rhyme or reason. Think of it as a collection of movies that we've referenced a lot in previous seasons or been curious about for a long time. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. You know you're in for a good week when you go to watch the movie and on Amazon, instead of the button saying play, it says play again.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Is that still from when I came down and we watched it?
Probably so. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. This movie is one that I have seen many times. Most of those times were on like rental video or edited cable version when I was a kid. This was a movie my dad really liked. And it was interesting, like we've talked about with a lot of movies that fall into that category for us, to kind of come back to it with a more like critical eye or taking notes because you have to talk about it afterwards. It kind of changes the way you look at it. Mm-hmm. And with this one, I think it held up, and I think I actually appreciate it more now than I have at any point previously.
Yeah. This was one that I hadn't really watched much when I was a kid. My dad's favorite westerns and grandpa's were always John Wayne's. So I feel like once I got a little bit older, I could pick what I wanted to watch western-wise. That's when I got more into the Clint Eastwood westerns. And it's two totally different feels to westerns, but I definitely appreciate this a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, this one, so I guess to backtrack a bit, we've talked about this season being the season where we just kind of watch movies that we reference a lot or that we think are not necessarily horror movies but have good horror elements or do things that horror movies can learn from. And I felt very, very justified because in the Amazon description for this movie, they had like moods, and one of the moods listed was horrific.
Oh, really?
Is that not so on brand for us?
Great. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but that's great.
So yeah, I feel like this one is technically a Western and not a horror movie, but it also has a lot of elements that are common to horror movies and did some things that I thought were just really good from a story perspective that sort of fit into more of the horror, maybe we would say story arcs or not really tropes, but like things that horror movies tap into that are effective. Yeah. So that's kind of setting the scene. I will do the intro, and then you can do your fun facts, and then we will get into the 6-gun shooting details.
Like it. Nice.
In 1973, Universal Pictures brought us High Plains Drifter, a dark western starring and directed by Clint Eastwood. This movie tells the story of an American frontier mining town who hire a mysterious gunman to protect them from some soon-to-be-released from jail criminals who they expect to come back seeking revenge. The townspeople soon find out that when you sell your soul, the price may be more than you bargained for. High Plains Drifter was made on a budget of $5.5 million and made almost $16 million at the box office. It can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video. What did you learn about this movie?
Did you know that Clint Eastwood had this entire town built from scratch? Universal Pictures wanted the movie to be shot entirely in the studio lot. Little did they know that you don't tell Clint Eastwood what to do. So you know what he did? He decided to build the town Lago, which was around 300 miles away from Hollywood, near a lake called Mono Lake. In the California Sierras. The other thing I really like about this is the way that Clint Eastwood found the set, basically, was he just loaded up himself in the pickup truck and just drove around until he found a good shooting location. Which
nice.
I just think is like also like a, you don't tell me what to do, I'm going to do this on my own. And he just like went off and did it.
Yeah.
I just really like that. So like I was kind of saying in the intro part, I grew up more on the John Wayne, which I still love the John Wayne, Westerns for sure. But John Wayne actually denounced the movie for its violence. So, you guys don't know, John Wayne's style is more old school, black cowboy hat on the bad guy.
Yeah.
Black cowboy hat on the good guy kind of thing. And, you never shoot a man in the back. Clint Eastwood's, I felt like, was more realistic. But after the movie's release, John Wayne and Clint Eastwood seemed to be caught up in a feud with each other. As sources suggest, John Wayne received a letter from Eastwood suggesting to cast him in High Plains Drifter as Wayne's career has started to fade. Possibly he didn't like the fact that he was being asked by this quote-unquote kid, to be in a Western, or, it was the content of the story. I would think it'd be the content of the story. But John Wayne apparently viewed the film as un-American, and he swore to never star in a film with Eastwood ever. But Clint Eastwood didn't necessarily care because it's Clint Eastwood. Yep. I just assumed that. So the cast of the movie, actually, actors and actresses, actually were the ones who helped paint the houses of Lago red for the shoot. It was taken over by professionals, but they did start it. And apparently, it took 380 gallons of paint to paint that whole town red. That's the facts for the movie.
Very nice. I kind of wonder if John Wayne not liking the story maybe had a little bit to do too with like what he perceived as arrogance from a young up and comer, thinking he could just call him in, and like be in charge.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
There's probably a little bit going on both sides of that story, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, on one side you gotta think like, well, John Wayne, you didn't invent Westerns. You just like became famous in them. And what Clint Eastwood was doing was like changing how they were, to the more, I mean, it's really to the type of films that we have nowadays. Like, I'm not saying all films are realistic, but it was more like if I'm gonna be in a shootout with this guy, I don't care if I'm facing him. Mm-hmm. I'm like, the point is for him to lose. Yeah, and that's what Clint Eastwood's thing was.
Yeah, less of like that myth of sort of the maybe rosy-colored glasses looking at the past. Yeah. It definitely is not that, and definitely is more in line with kind of like other gritty 70s movies.
Well, and there's also like tying into that, this is like, I mean, this isn't just a plain story. I mean, as big of a fan of John Wayne's movies that I am, like, he has 3 movies that are basically the exact same concept, like the exact same concept. Yeah. Rio Lobo, Rio Bravo, and El Dorado. And what, Clint Eastwood was doing with these Westerns, like with this Western specifically, it's not just cut and dry. Like, you have a, good guy come to town, saves the day. Like, there's more like meaning behind the stuff that's happening. Like you're finding out that, he's not just a good guy. He's just happened to be in the right place at the right time to help out. Like, he's a legit, based off of the things he did, a bad guy.
Yeah, and you're kind of getting into what I was talking about earlier when I said that this had like some story elements that I think horror can tap into effectively. Mm-hmm. And that's like the things aren't so cut and dry. You know what I mean? Like, everybody, with the exception of maybe 2 people in the town, were kind of just as bad, or just as guilty maybe as the bad guys. Like, there were no redeeming qualities. There were not a lot of good people in this movie. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't just that, like you were saying, white hat versus black hat. It was Well, I don't really know who to like or who to cheer for or who to feel good about because everybody's kind of terrible.
Yeah.
But there also was a lot of kind of twists and turns, a lot of plot developments over the course of this story. And I honestly picked up on several things that I hadn't previously on other times that I'd watched it. And that's why I was saying I kind of appreciated it more after this one because just of how detailed the story was.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because like you're saying, I actually don't think anyone in the town was good based off the fact that, like, they watched their sheriff just die or, you know, get whipped to death and didn't really do much. I mean, like, not justifying what the sheriff went through or any of the other people in the town, but it was just like, you guys all kind of, like, and then wasn't the town, like, built on, like, government land? Like, it wasn't even...
So what had happened was they found out, supposedly, at least from what I picked up in, the mine that is the main industry for the town was actually on government land. So the town and the private company that was operating the mine was actually not entitled to any of the profits from it.
Right.
Which is what that marshal had discovered and was going to report, and that's why they hired the other outlaws to kill him.
Right. And so it's like, you're all guilty there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they hired murderers, and then when the murderers had killed the lawman and were harassing the townspeople because there was no lawman to keep them in check, they framed them for stealing and got them arrested. Yeah. So they're just as crooked and awful, you know, as anybody.
Yeah.
And it was, I just... We'll get into it more, but there were also some things with that about like the way that he treated different people in the town and the way that corresponded to some of those like flashbacks and the unfolding story that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, as far as like kind of how this relates to horror or is similar to horror movies or does things well that horror movies sometimes try to do well and sometimes don't deliver on, I loved the soundtrack. Because I feel like they really merged in some of the stuff that we heard stylistically in some of like the giallo horror movies on top of a more like traditionally Western soundtrack. And so like as he's writing in the beginning and writing out at the end, and then I think also during kind of the big confrontation towards the end, that's much more the sound is much more in line with that like kind of uncomfortable, almost unpredictable, almost like set you on edge style of like Goblin soundtrack for what's the name of that movie? Suspiria, the original Suspiria. Than it is with a traditional Western. And so the fact that the movie could kind of go from sort of the more almost like jokey, tropey Western to that pivot into the more like dark horror feel, I thought was really cool. And kind of the abruptness of that in some parts really I thought was effective.
Yeah, which absolutely makes sense too, just from Clint Eastwood's like, just, you know, being the director of the film, the upbringing with westerns that he had was, you know, all those Italian spaghetti westerns, you know.
Yeah.
So you could definitely, you know, that there was a tie into, you know, even when Suspiria came out, like in 77 or something like that. I mean,
yeah, it was 70s.
It's right around the same time, and it's just totally like almost like a nod to like his upbringing in Western. You know, I did hear a fun fact about Clint Eastwood and his first Western that he did, the spaghetti Western that basically made him the big star. He was just like kind of not a drifter, but he was just like, he got the random offer to come film, you know, I think it was, you know, one of his, not a few more dollars, but one of those, and he was just like, yeah, sure, I've never been to Italy, kind of thing. Went over and filmed it, and, you know, by the time he got back, it basically, quote unquote, by the time he got back, it was like a huge hit, and like he just did it because he just wanted to go over there, like for travel. Yeah. And that's what kind of set the stage.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right place, right time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, and then I think another element that really worked well in this movie was after I'll just call them the outlaws, got out of jail, and they're like making their way back towards the town. and they're talking about like getting their revenge, and they're being really brutal to all the people they come across along the way, and are killing and shooting their horses when they get injured, and so, and it just like sort of interleaving those scenes with what's going on in the town gives that sort of sense of like urgency or like impending doom that wouldn't have been there otherwise. And I feel like that's more of a horror thing than like a traditionally Western thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like the worse they look and the closer they get, the more it builds the tension. And so instead of just having a bunch of scenes of dialogue and the people talking about them in the town, it was a way of like making you scared of them too, which was kind of a cool ad. Which
was done in Halloween. If you think about like the the houses that he would go into while like the mom or the lady making the sandwich, like him killing her, like it's the same concept. Like that's the same tie-in to this Western to a actual horror film. I mean, it's the same exact concept, and it was executed very well because by the time they got to town, you were thinking like, God, you had to know that they were going to stop him, but you're just like, this is going to be a pretty nasty deal.
Yeah. Yeah, it also had some things that didn't like age super well. The whole dynamic between him and the blonde woman in the town, where he like drags her in the barn and basically rapes her, but then she enjoys it. That's like, the 70s portrayed the dynamic between men and women very differently, I think. Right. And the fact that later in the movie he's the other woman is like afraid that he's going to assault her too, and then he's like, I'm a little tired, maybe come back in 30 minutes or something, and then she just like throws herself at him. That feels like a movie made in a very different time. And that first scene in the barn was definitely not in the edited cable version that I grew up with.
Right. Yeah, that's why when you were telling me this, I was like, wait, what? You used to watch this? How much did he fast forward?
Yeah, exactly. So that was a little rough.
I mean, I think the idea is what he did was absolutely wrong, but the idea is to show like he's not a hero. He's not the John Wayne character, and so it's, and I think that's exactly what Clint Eastwood wanted for this film. Like that's what he wanted to show, like the dynamic of like even someone, basically the unsung hero, like the Punisher type heroes that are like Batman, is a good example, like has his demons. So, yeah. It's like you were mentioning, everyone has their demons, especially this damn town.
Yeah. Well, and, as it's kind of going on and the story's unfolding, he's in the town and he's very quiet, but he's almost just like this unstoppable force. And in the beginning, he's not doing anything unprompted, right? Like, he is reacting to the way people attack him or come after him or whatever. And then as it goes on, it's almost like he is getting more active in their punishment, I guess. And it's interesting because it seems like everything he's doing is directly contrary to everyone in the town, but they have no morals, and they're like, oh, well, he can just take care of those outlaws when they come, and then we'll kill him and move along and be fine. And so, but he doesn't even ever pretend to like try and win their favor or anything. And so the scene where he's in the store and he just like takes stuff off the shelves and hands it to the Native Americans that everybody in the town is being mean to. Mm-hmm. And then he's just like people keep trying to talk to him, and then he just does stuff to piss them off. Like, at one point he makes the midget both the mayor and the sheriff. Yeah. It's just like, he's just like taking anybody that the town doesn't like and elevating them. Yeah. And I love that. And you can tell they all hate it, but they also feel like they need him. And so there's just this weird dynamic the whole time. And you kind of see as time is going on that he's basically invincible. And so they keep trying more and more elaborate ways of killing him, and they just don't work. And so it's this weird like combination of like hatred and need that they have for him that makes them like placate him or go along with what he's saying and doing all the time, except also they hate him and want to kill him. Yeah.
Well, yeah. You gotta also think, like, how great would it be to just be that type of person where you don't care and you don't need anyone else, so you just do whatever you want? I just feel like that would just be like heaven.
Yeah.
Not doing all the stuff they did, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, and Clint Eastwood also wrote himself a lot of, like, blatant badassery in this movie. Like that part where the hotel owner's wife comes out and is like, I had no idea what you were capable of. And he's just like, you still don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I can just imagine him sitting in the back of his truck, like, working on those lines and being like, hell yeah, Clint, tell her.
I got him. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so then the story that unfolds, like we had brought up before, was that the people in the town were super corrupt. They found out that their mine was on government land. They weren't entitled to the profits from it. The marshal was going to tell the government, so they hired the outlaws to kill him. Then the outlaws were terrorizing the town, so they framed them to get them sent to, like, a federal type prison. And then they're getting out to go and going to go extract revenge on the people from the town and loot it and steal everything they can. So they've hired some people from the mine, or have some people from the mine, who are supposed to be there protecting them. And then they mess with Clint when he comes into town and he kills them. So then they're like, well, crap, we got nobody to protect us, so let's just hire him. And so then they give him basically free reign of the town to stay there. And so he can have anything he wants. He has unlimited credit at the store. He takes out a whole room in the hotel. And he's also supposed to be preparing them to fight with, you know, these outlaws who are making their way towards the town. And the background of that is he and other people in the town are having flashbacks of the night when the three outlaws killed the marshal. And an important part of that they keep bringing up is that all of those townspeople were standing around watching, and he was begging for help, and then at the end said, damn you all to hell, right before he died. Mm-hmm. But as you see more of that flashback, you see Mordecai, who was like the midget, was hiding under the like the porch, and was just horrified and like crying because he wanted so badly to do something to help the guy, but he couldn't. And then the hotel owner's wife had actually run out and screamed that somebody should help him and someone should put a stop to it. And then he like dragged her back inside. So you'll notice that through the movie, the only people that Clint is not abusive to are that woman and Mordecai. Yeah. And so that was the thing I hadn't picked up on previously. But then, you know, obviously, like, he paints the word hell over the logo sign at the edge of town, which is a nice nod to him saying, you know, damn you all to hell. And then the guys come back, and his plan is to set up a picnic and a sign that says, welcome home, boys, and to have some gunmen hidden on the roofs to shoot them down. And so then they come back into town, and he leaves when they're on the way, after he's already gone and shot at him to piss him off. Mm-hmm. And so then it's just like this shootout and a blatant slaughter of most everybody in the town that you didn't like from seeing those flashbacks.
Yeah.
And so basically he just set the townspeople out as a picnic of victims for the guys who he had been hired to protect them from, but then came back and got revenge on them too. And it was just such... that whole scene at the end, you know, where the town's on fire and painted red and the guys are out there and he's just kind of picking them off one by one, really was kind of a classic horror scene, you know, of you have the guys who think that they're in charge, and then they find out that there's this creature out there that is stronger than they are, and they get what's coming to them. And so it had both a lot of the like anxiety and stuff of a horror movie, but also the deep satisfaction of seeing him get revenge on these terrible people.
Yeah, and I think, you know, something I was reading about was talking about how this could have some sort of supernatural tie to it, you know, where, you know, he could be the, you know, the ghost, or not the ghost, but the...
Oh, I thought that's for sure what it was.
Oh, like the spirit of vengeance, basically, is what he was, is what it was saying, and that, you know, when, because based off the end, when Mordecai's doing the, you know, he said, you already know me, and it's like, so it's like he just came in, punished everyone that needed it, and then, took off. And it's just, the thing is like, I feel like if you just watch this as a typical Western, or like, I haven't watched this nearly as many times as you, so like, just for me, it's like, after reading, it's like, oh, that absolutely makes sense. That it is like a spirit of vengeance, and, when he says, I don't even know your name, he's like, you already do, or whatever.
Yeah.
Just kind of shows, and he goes off into the, to the desert where he came from, and so, yet again, that's another tie to horror film right there.
Yeah, is that he just, no backstory or anything. He just sort of descends on the town, orchestrates this massive payback against everybody who's wronged either him or the marshal. I mean, depending on if you think he's vengeance or like the marshal's ghost, and just wreaks havoc. And it's awesome. And I loved it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a damn good film, man. I was definitely glad. Like, this was not that I don't look forward to watching the films for the movie or for the podcast, but I really looked forward to watching this one.
Oh, same. Yeah.
It was one of those where it was like, you're like, oh man, okay, which one we gotta do? And it's like, oh, High Plains. Oh yeah, High Plains Drifter. Here we go. Yeah.
Also, like 100% the template for the story of Evil Dead movie that I can't remember. Oh yeah. Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness.
There we go. Yeah. I'm running slow today. I'm sorry.
Same. No, this was a damn good pick, man. And I feel like this is perfect. Can fit in that category.
Yes. Yeah. This is like 100% in line with some of the types of movies we wanted to cover this season.
And more of a horror movie than a lot of others that we watch.
Yeah, for sure.
And I will say this too. I know that it has like the Spirit of Vengeance and stuff, and you touch base on this, and just my final kind of thoughts is it's 100%. It was 100% the soundtrack for me. It was when, there was a scene where they were kind of zooming in on like the bad guys, and like when Clint Eastwood was pissing them off, and it was just playing kind of like just the sounds that it was playing then. A couple times when it was showing the town, it looked real eerie, and it was just like kind of a humming sound. It's just like it really, really eerie audio that was being put, and like just that alone, I felt like kind of did the trick. Like it made it feel like it was like October, and that Halloween was coming, and just that kind of thing. So that's what kind of definitely did this for me. I mean, you guys could call it a horror film or Western, whatever you want, but deep down inside, I feel like this belongs closer to this. It leans to the horror side. It is horrific, than Under the Skin.
Yeah. And under ones that we liked more than that too. Even like this isn't just like, well, it's better than the worst one.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'll watch it again. Yeah.
Damn good pick. And damn you.
Me?
Not you.
Oh.
Them.
Except Australia.
They. Yep.
Love them.
Alright, well, I'm going to stop this before I get canceled.
Probably a good idea. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com. Or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.